Hello there everybody, Sam's Trains here and welcome back to the railway. Today I'm looking at a brand new train pack by Rapido. I've been looking forward to this train pack for a good long while and finally I've got one and I'm doing the review. So the train pack is of course this. It is the all new Wisbech and Upwell train pack from Rapido. Now this contains the J70 locomotive, which obviously has been released before, but only as an exclusive under model rail. Now it's coming out as a general release at all retailers in these train packs. This will also be the J70's first outing in the GER Crimson livery, which has never been seen before. The pack also contains two Wisbech and Upwell tram cars, or coaches if you will, and these never have been seen before. These are the new tool products in this pack. So the RRP for this train pack is £269.95, although mine came from Hatton's for £229.46, which was a nice little discount there. So let's break down the price a little bit. The J70 on its own you can buy for £127.50, and each of the coaches in this pack are quite expensive at £67.95 each. So that means that if you buy this set rather than buying everything individually, you can make a saving of about £34, which is another tidy discount really, provided of course you actually want everything in this pack. Anyway, really looking forward to seeing this. Can't wait to see that J70 in a new livery, and I'm really looking forward to seeing those tram cars as well. So let's get started and let's take a look. So first up, I like the packaging. It comes in this nice sturdy box which has line drawings of the models on the front of the box. They are generic drawings though, so they don't tell you the livery or the era of the models inside. For that we have to look on the side of the box. So the version I've got here is the Wisbech and Upwell train pack 953002. This one is the post 1919 GER livery, which is the crimson, and I went for the DC/silent version, although obviously there are DCC options available if you'd like that. That is pretty much it though for the box, nothing really else to see, so let's lift the lid. I've not lifted this lid yet, I've kept the lid on until I was filming, so we can experience this together. Aha, owner's manual. Well, let's start with that then. So yeah, Wisbech and Upwell train pack. Let's see what we've got inside. So, a bit of an introduction to the model. Contents, read this bit first. This seems like very important information. So they're saying not to hold the coaches anywhere near those railings on the ends, and that's because they're very fragile apparently. So we've got to lift them out of the packaging, especially by the middle of the coach, which is fine. Then we've got a bit about the J70 here and how to hold it. And then we've got a lot on the prototype history, so if you'd like to pause and read some of this, do feel free to, although I will give you a bit of background on the loco in just a second. There's a little bit more on the top of that page. Operation on analog. I think these do have coreless motors in them, which is why they're warning against using older controllers, and also the Hammer & Morgan duets, because I think they are feedback controllers. So you just want a straight analog controller with no feedback with this, or of course DCC, which a lot of people will use. If you want to install a decoder, this shows you how to get the body off. So it looks like we've got some screws underneath the loco. Yeah, you can pop the body off and then you can fit your decoder. There's a list of the DCC functions. Running in, yeah, it does need to be run in, that's fine. Little bit about servicing there. How to fit the open end windows. So this is quite an interesting feature. So they've said that apparently photos show that the real things ran with the windows open. So they have included the open windows, which you can fit if you like. And this just tells you how to do that. So that's a good bit of thinking there. Yeah, it seems to be quite thorough really to show how this is done. There's also some information on fixing the chains. Now with the old J70s, the chains were pre-fitted. It looks like they still are on this, but this is kind of telling you how to put them back on if they come off somehow. So that's fine. Couplings, cow catchers, more information on those, good photos. And here we've got a bit about fitting the accessories to the coaches, which consists of the gas tank and some buffer beam parts. So you've got a little bit to fit to the coach as well. Blimey, I tell you what, this is incredibly thorough. We've got fitting passengers if you want to do that, what to do if there are missing or damaged parts, etc. And yeah, this is what I was looking for, the parts diagram. So this one on the left hand side is for the J70. It's really, really tiny, but you can get a rough idea of how complex the model is. And speaking of complex, here's a diagram for the tram car, which seems to be equally complicated, really, doesn't it? Just to say it's a coach. And I've not seen one of these coaches yet in the flesh, at least not held one in my hands, so really looking forward to that. Great, what a fantastic piece of documentation. They seem to have thought of everything there. But I want to see the models now, so let's peel this back. Oh, look at this. So, I have never had a single model in this livery before, the Great Eastern Crimson. Cannot wait to get this out and have a closer look at it. But it looks fantastic in the box. Let's see what sort of accessories we've got, and they're all in this bag. And yeah, it seems to be what the instructions covered, really. So you've got all the equipment you need in order to model the windows in the open position, so that's fine, and they look like an etched metal piece on that big sprue. We've also got the tanks for the underside, as mentioned, a whole host of buffer beam details, including proper movable screw-link couplings, which is a quality feature that I really like to see. And it's all in a resealable bag, which is important, so you can take out what you want, and then you can reseal the rest of it nice and safely. So again, great thinking at every level. Okay, well, let's start off with the loco, I think. Really, really looking forward to this one. And I do remember that these locos were absolutely incredible, but I've not looked at one for a while, so I am very excited about this, frankly. Okay, let's open this up. Let's take our first look at it. What's the finish like? Yeah, fine. A really nice satin finish on this. Look at that. Yeah, these used to be real quality, so unless anything's changed, this is going to be as well. All right, so here it is up close and personal for you. And this is quite a bit different to the J70 I've already got, because that one didn't have the skirts covering the valve gear and such. This version, as you can see, does have these skirts, so you won't get all of that motion visible, although we've still got the coupling and connecting rods here, although the full valve gear hasn't been modelled, but I guess that's fair enough because you're not going to see it. But yeah, this livery is fantastic. I just love the contrast between the crimson of the body and then that creamy off-white of the underframe. It just looks gorgeous, really, really lovely. So that's the loco. I'll show you a bit more on that in just a second, but of course we've seen the J70 before. What we haven't seen, well, at least what I haven't seen yet, are the coaches, or the tram cars, as I should call them. So let's pull one of them out. They are both different, I understand. So we'll just pick the top one first, and let's have a look. So these are quite expensive coaches, nearly £70 each at the retailers, but I also understand that they're very high spec coaches, and of course brand new tooled as well. So let's see, let's peel back the plastic. And already you can see there's quite some complexity here in the moulding on the roof. Very interesting. Right, let's pull this up. All right. Wow. So there you have it. What a detailed coach this is. Detailed on the outside, and you probably won't be able to see this on camera, but I can also see quite a bit of detail on the inside too. So a very, very detailed coach with quite a few features by the looks of it. And I'll get to showing you those in just a second. But what a gorgeous bit of decoration they've done on this. We've got the Great Eastern Crimson looking really rich with a gorgeous, gorgeous finish. Yeah, cannot wait to see this running with the J70. So that's GE number 7. We've got another coach in the pack, so let me pull that out for you. Here we go. And let's take a look at this one. Here we go. Just a beautiful little train pack here, and of course complete, because there were only ever 2 of these tram cars, so you've got both of them and the loco. It's a complete train. It's really, really cool. All right, so here it is, GE number 8. And you can tell this is the same base model. I mean, obviously it looks quite similar, but there are differences here in the moulding. You can see the panelling on the side here is different. We've got fewer panels, and we've got a different roof as well. Again, a bit less panelling on this roof. So they're not even just 2 of the same coaches that have been painted slightly differently with different numbers or whatever. Yeah, they have actually modelled the detail differences. So those are the 2 coaches. There you go. Hopefully you can see some of the differences there. Beautiful, beautiful coaches. Quite lovely to have a bogie coach or two that is this small. These are possibly some of the smaller bogie coaches I've got. And then of course the beautiful, beautiful J70, all in matching livery. So I'll talk more about these in just a moment. I'll show you all of the features and the different details. But first, let's have a bit of background on these things in real life. Back in the Great Eastern days, the J70 was known as the C53, and this was introduced in 1903 to the design of James Holden. These locos were tram engines, and they had an extremely unusual appearance due to their wooden bodies and also the skirting that covered the wheels, cylinders and valve gear. Underneath all of this though, they were relatively conventional steam locomotives with a 180 psi boiler and Walschaerts valve gear. From 1923, the C53 was reclassified to J70 under the LNER, and most people know these as such. They were best known for their use on the Wisbech and Upwell tramway, where they hauled these beautiful tram cars. Like I say, only 2 of these tram cars were ever built, and both date back to 1884. Built by the Great Eastern Railway, both tram cars were similar, except for, as we've seen, things like the panelling and the roof layout, which were unique to each vehicle. One of the 2 coaches was eventually scrapped by mistake, having literally only just been restored, but fortunately the second coach was then rescued and similarly restored, so one does remain. As for the J70s though, they weren't quite so lucky. Every single one had been withdrawn by the mid-1950s, and none of them were saved for preservation. So here it is, the Rapido J70 in the Great Eastern Crimson, up close and personal for you. And as great as the coaches are, in my opinion, this is the best part of this train pack. And as far as I know, this train pack is the only way you can get this version of the J70. I don't believe they've done this as a standalone model. And yet it is incredible, it really, really is. It's quite an old model now, it's been out for a number of years, but unlike a lot of other aging models, this one is still as mind-blowing as it was when I first saw one. So for the uninitiated, let's have the guided tour. So we've got what is supposed to be the wooden body here, painted into the crimson, looks excellent, really lovely finish. That's made of plastic, and I think that's fair enough. It's a slim piece, it wouldn't be metal in real life, that's all fine. We do have the, I guess, sole bar or the chassis of the thing though, which is made of metal. So that is die cast, and the model is quite heavy at 171 grams. That's actually a little bit more than the Rapido Hunslet 16-inch, which is a larger loco, I think. So the J70 is a pretty heavy loco. But what you can see here is not all that the model has to offer, because inside the wooden casing, we effectively have another body. So if I look inside, you can see here we have a smoke box with all of the detail on it. We've got a detailed smoke box door, etc, etc. This is die cast, so made of metal. If we look through the windows, you can see we've got a boiler, just a general steam locomotive inside there really. All modelled, all detailed. Again, this is die cast. And then at the back, we've got a firebox with all of the detail around it, firebox door. Again, this is die cast. So it's a 2-bodied locomotive. You've got the body on the outside that you can see, and yet inside we've got really another body with all of that detail on it. To me, that is absolutely mind-blowing and not bad at all for 130 odd pounds. I think the complexity of this model more than justifies what it costs. And we'll talk more about the features and details in just a second, but first let's talk about the livery. So you've got the cream painted section underneath with the Great Eastern lettering on it. All of this is painted very, very nicely indeed. And then we've got the running number just printed onto the side of the body there, but the quality of the printing is absolutely fine. Here's what the thing looks like on the ends. You can see we've got the running number also printed onto the buffer beams, underneath which we have a cowcatcher. That's another unusual feature for a British locomotive. And through the cowcatcher pokes the couplings, which are NEM ones, so you could swap them out for something else if you want, and they pivot as well. The buffer beams are quite simple out of the box. They don't really have any details fitted to them. I assume that's so that they don't foul the couplings, but there are details to fit if you'd like to. Pre-fitted though are these metal buffers, which are indeed sprung. Look at that, fantastic. The ends of the model are detailed higher up as well. You've got the opening in the front here, and if you're willing to do some modelling, you can model that in either the open or the closed position. And then above there you've got glazed windows, which are separately fitted, complete with the frames, looking excellent. And then you've also got these separately fitted lamp brackets, which, like I say, are indeed separate parts. The opening for the cab has separately fitted handrails, which are nicely fitted, and inside the cab there is quite a bit of detail, much of this separately fitted as well. So a very, very detailed model. Along the sides we do indeed have real chains, which are fitted from the factory. So these are not just the moulded impression of chains, they genuinely are the real article. So again, gives you a good idea of the level of detail. And then up on the roof we have a number of impressive parts as well. You've got this, which is positioned over the top of the chimney, which I assume is some sort of spark arrestor or maybe a filter for debris. And the fine mesh texture has been beautifully achieved on this part. I don't know how they would mould something like that, but the detail there is incredibly fine. And then we've also got a separately fitted bell, which was painted grey on my old J70, but here it's been painted into a metallic colour, which looks even better. And then there's a fair bit of other roof furniture as well. As I noted earlier on, this model has the skirts covering up the wheels and such, but they are there, obviously. And here's a little look at the slightly simplified version of the valve gear that this model has. If you were to get a J70 without the skirting, then this is what the wheels would look like. You can see we do have the valve gear here, and there's a little bit more detail. So all in all, this is a genuinely gorgeous model. It's been built to a high standard. Every part I can see is nice and straight with no visible glue. Yes, the moulding's a few years old now, but it still looks sharp and crisp, and the moulding is all absolutely fine on the bodywork, so that's a tick. And the livery and decoration is truly second to none. I absolutely love this Great Eastern Crimson. So that's the Loco. I'll test the performance of this in just a second, but for now, let's take a close look at those coaches. And I say coaches, I suppose really I should be calling these tram cars, but I guess I'll use the terms interchangeably because most likely I'll forget, even if I do try to correct myself. But anyway, you're now seeing a mixture of different shots from these two coaches slash tram cars, and as you can see, they are absolutely beautiful. There is no denying that. But they're also extremely expensive. At the retailers, if you buy these separately, the coaches are £67.95, so almost £70. So with such a high price, obviously comes quite high expectations. And are those expectations met? Well, in some areas yes, and in others no. First of all, these coaches are quite light. They come in at 69 and 67 grams respectively, which isn't that heavy for a coach of this size. That's over 10 grams lighter than a Hatton's Genesis coach, the 6-wheel Hatton's Genesis coaches being less than half the price of these Wisbech tram cars as well. Now obviously this is not a fair apples to apples comparison because the Hatton's Genesis coaches are made from a generic tooling from which lots and lots of different products can be produced. Each of these Rapido tram cars though are tooled to represent one prototype only, and they'll only get a handful of different products out of each of these toolings because they've done a handful of different liveries. So it is perfectly reasonable that these tram cars should be more expensive than Hatton's Genesis, but I think the extent of how expensive they are is quite surprising at more than double the price. But you can overlook this if the quality is okay, and generally yeah, the quality is okay, but there are one or two things that I noticed quite early on that are quite surprising. And it's mainly to do with these long unsupported spans of wiring and pipework on the model, mainly on the roofs. So you can see this, I assume it's wiring for the lighting. It's a massive long metal wire, but it's only connected at either end. So you've got this section in the middle which rides up on the roof of the coach. You can see that it's been shaped so that it follows the contours of the roof panelling, but because it's not fixed down in the middle, it doesn't do that, it just bounces up. And it's very noticeable and very flimsy, and it's also the same on both coaches. So unless I'm impossibly unlucky, this is a widespread issue. And speaking of the Hatton's Genesis coaches, if we look at those, you can see that the wiring on their coaches is fixed down all the way across the roof, and it looks a little bit better. This, on a coach that costs almost £70, does look a little bit amateurish. And we've got a similar issue on coach 8 where there's another unsupported wire going under the chassis, which is kind of loose and flimsy. Not a good quality look. I'm surprised they didn't pick up on these issues during the sampling phase and do something about them. But besides the lightweight and slightly fragile nature of these coaches, they are generally fantastic. So the decoration, as you can clearly see, is wonderful. We've got a great satin finish on this. The roofs are painted excellently, as are the bodies with all of the various lining. You've got these beautiful crests printed onto the bodywork, and the running numbers and also the third and first class lettering all looks absolutely excellent. I guess to talk about the detail, we should start on these verandas where most of the detail really is. So you've got these very complex railings on each veranda, which are really nicely done, and although these parts are fragile, and I believe Rapido when they say that, everything does look nice and straight, and as long as you're not sort of lifting the models with these parts, I can't see any reason why these would break unnecessarily. And then they've also put these sort of platforms on, which are hinged and etched, I think, and these would presumably allow someone to travel between the two tram cars, although whether the public would be doing that, I'm not sure. I assume that would be for a member of staff. But nevertheless, very detailed verandas, detailed buffer beams as well. There's even some decoration on those, which is good, although the buffers are not sprung. I don't mind not having sprung buffers on rolling stock, but at almost £70 I was kind of expecting this to have them. The coupling on this is kinematic, and it's also coupled up to the bogies so that when the bogies turn, the couplings will want to move left and right as well. So that's a really cool design, and we'll take a look at how that works later on. Another pretty impressive thing about these models is the interior. So we have got the sort of planking effect on the inside of the roof, which is so unnecessary but amazing at the same time. And there's also these little etched metal interpretations of the leather handles that you'd have inside the coaches, which people could grab onto if they were standing up. So that is just incredible attention to detail. And then on the first and third class coach, we've got these benches on the inside, which again are nicely detailed. And then the third class coach just has one long bench going through the entire compartment. So you have got some variation there. We've also got what looks like light bulbs inside the coaches and also just inside the verandas. I didn't notice anything about lighting on the instructions, so I'm doubting that these are actually lit coaches. Again, for almost £70, that is a pity, but I will take a look at those bulbs when the power's applied and we'll see if those work. I don't think they will do though. And then finally, underneath the coaches is also very impressive. We've got the full brake rigging assembly pre-fitted, and there's some serious detail in this as well. The bogies are also very nicely detailed with the full brake rigging, etc. And even the backs of the wheels are detailed. I'll show you the fronts of the wheels. They are kind of similar to the Hatton's Genesis wheels, but then on the back you've also got the sort of spokes actually moulded into them. And I can't remember ever seeing that before, so that's new to me. And it also looks like the axles sit into proper bearings, so we've got some real quality in these coaches as well. And before I forget, these coaches also have the real metal chains on them too, just like the Loco did, which again just goes to show how crazily detailed these coaches are. So they're very expensive, one or two slight issues in the coaches, which makes me question whether they're worth the money. But on the other hand, they are incredibly well detailed. The attention to detail is mind-blowing on these. So on that other hand, yeah, you can see why these would be quite expensive. But that's it, that's a close look at the coaches and of course the J70 Loco. So with that, let's get it all down onto the track, let's test the performance of everything, and I'll also show you that mechanism on the Loco. So there is Toby, I mean the J70, down onto the track. I guess I should be calling this the C53, being that it's in the Great Eastern livery, but either way, I guess you know what I mean. I've already filmed the initial performance test, and my goodness, that was a treat. So stay tuned for that, I'll show you that shortly. After that though, I went and did a deep dive into the mechanism and internals of this Loco, and that's what I'm going to talk about first of all. So from the outside of the Loco, there are no visible pickups, so to find out how this Loco picks up power, we've got to get inside. The base keeper plate is removed via 3 screws. Some of them are under the brake rigging though, which is a little bit annoying, but I found that the brake rigging was actually just friction fitted and it can be popped off quite easily. Removing the base reveals that this Loco is split chassis. Now, traditionally, I'm not a big fan of split chassis designs for a number of reasons. And sure, having the power pickup through the bearings like this is a real headache if you want to clean the pickups. But otherwise, this split chassis design has been executed really, really well. It runs excellently, there's no reliability issues through the axle-based pickup, and my usual concern over the failing plastic insulators between the wheels is not applicable here, because as you can see, the axles have been reinforced here with a metal sleeve, so I can't see these failing anytime soon. It's also driven by a single axle, so it's not overcomplicated, a nice and simple mechanism really. So the body removal goes like this. I removed the couplings so that I could get the base keeper off, but you'll also want to remove the couplings to get the body off if you want to chip it or put some lubricant on the motor or whatever. And then it was a case of removing these 4 screws in each corner of the chassis. Now, according to the instructions, I could then turn the loco the right way up again and the body should just slide off. But unfortunately it didn't. The body was truly stuck on, and I'm not too sure why. So in the end I had to quite awkwardly grab whatever part of the chassis I could and pull it out. And I ended up using quite a bit of force, more than I'd like. So I'm not sure what happened here, but do be very, very careful removing the body to chip these, because there's a real scope for doing some damage here. Anyway, the chassis on the inside is a true masterclass in model making. The amount that they've packed into this is incredible, particularly when you consider that they haven't compromised the interior detail of the tram, which is quite amazing. So there's a quality coreless motor inside, really good motors these, and they have a flywheel fitted. How did they fit that in? I don't know. Above there's a next 18-pin DCC socket, so you need an 18-pin decoder if you want to chip this. Nice modern socket there. They've even got a speaker inside. Amazing that they've been able to do that. This is a little bit loose, and I suspect it's this that could have been stuck when I couldn't get the body off. But I do wonder if something there broke while I was trying to remove the body. But either way. Anyway, the gauging back to back comes in at 14.4mm quite reliably, which is bang on the standard, so that's very good indeed. And I also went ahead and did the Gordon's Hill rolling test with the tram cars or the coaches. Now the first one, number 7, was fantastic. That rolled all the way down to the bottom, as you can see, did really well. Number 8 wasn't quite as good. It still was fine, it got past the signal box, but I did notice that one of its axles was a little bit tight, and as a result that one didn't do quite so well. Having said that, there are only 2 of these coaches ever made in real life, so you're never going to be putting a massive rake of these together. Pretty much any loco is going to be able to haul these, even if you do have 1 or 2 tight axles. So I'm going to go ahead and say that really doesn't matter. Anyway, back to the loco then. Let me show you how its first performance test went. So obviously I've tested one of these J70s before because I've got one in the L&ER livery, so I can remember that these locos are decent runners, but that was quite a long time ago and a new batch could run differently. So I'm going to start with a clean slate and see how this runs. So forwards direction, does it work at all? Let's give it some juice. Here goes. Wow, what an incredibly smooth start. This has not been running yet. This is literally its first ever test, and that moved off beautifully smoothly, and it's really quiet as well. And I can see that there's a flywheel action cut. Look at that, it glides to a halt. Let's do that again. Ready? I'll pull it into shot and then cut it off for you. Wow. Cut off. Oh. You know what? The old one ran pretty well, but I don't remember it running as well as this. That's great. Anyway, let's run past at 50% speed, show you what the gearing's like. 50%. Yeah, it goes quite speedily. But can it go at the slow speeds too? It looks like it would. Yeah. I think with some running in, that'll be even smoother if anything. So that's really, really impressive. What's the torque like? Let's see. You might not be able to see the wheels turning, but we ought to hear them. So 50% speed. Yep, see, coreless motor, torque to spare. Doesn't care that I've put an obstruction there, so it's not an underpowered loco. Finally, that's excellent. And even though it's not running yet, what is the crawl like straight out of the box? Let's see. This is going to be quite hard because I can't really see the wheels from where I'm sitting. You might see them a bit. But there we go, it's going. Look at that for a crawl. It's got to be one of the best crawlers on the market, hasn't it, that? Gosh, and in reverse. Oh, no, slow it down. Oh, it's just great. How awesome. So, better than I remember, actually. Yeah, quite a bit better than I remember. So, let's get this off around the track. Let's see what it looks like in motion. And let's double check that it's okay around the various curves and points. So, here we go. J70, off she goes. So, as recommended, I'm running this in at half speed, half power on the controller. And as you can see, that does look a little bit fast. In fact, perhaps a little bit unrealistic. However, because of that cordless motor and because of the great torque in the mechanism, you can slow this down to a more reasonable speed without taking a hit on performance. As we saw, it remains smooth even at the slower speeds, and I'm pretty confident that with any sort of load, particularly those two light coaches that this came with, it's not going to be slowing down and struggling around the curves. So yeah, maybe the gearing could be a little bit better, but the quality of the motor and presumably the rest of the mechanism is such that that really doesn't matter. So truly exemplary performance right out of the box, and once it's run in, presumably it can only get better. So I'll let it do that now. I'll let this run in fully, and then we'll come back, I'll couple it up to the coaches, and finally I'll get to see what this looks like all together. Cannot wait. I'll see you in just a second. Alright folks, there we go, running in complete, and I have to say, zero issues with this. No cutting out on points despite the short wheelbase, so that split chassis setup is working perfectly. Really nice and smooth, still nice and quiet, no binding up, no stuttering, nothing like that. It's just the perfect performer. And let's just have a little bit more of that crawl before I do more testing, because that was just incredible. Look at that. Try and do a gentle acceleration. Yeah. Fantastic. And in reverse. Nope, let's try a bit slower than that. It takes off at such low power that you've actually got to watch it because it's so responsive. But there we go. Accelerate. Oh, it's just great. And this is on analog too. It can only be better on digital. Anyway, let's keep it at that kind of speed and let's jump over the large Insel Frog express points. Dead zone coming up there. Alright, so it did stop at the slow speeds. I wonder how fast this has got to go before it doesn't stop. Let's try. Turn it up a bit. Right, let's try it at that speed then. Let's see. This is kind of to be expected because it is a short wheelbase loco, but as you can see, it managed that absolutely fine. So I guess on digital, if you have electro frog points, or if you use any sort of stay alive really, you're not going to see any problems. Yeah, look at that. A bit slower. Yeah, so it's only at the very slowest speeds that it's cutting out on the express points there. If it had wiper pickups, would it be a bit better than that? Well, possibly. Yeah, possibly, because the dead zone is smaller than the wheelbase, so it shouldn't really be cutting out. But yeah, I think for a split chassis design, it's actually not bad at all. Not bad. Anyway, let's get away from the points now. So I've set up the two coaches and coupled them together, and I'm really not expecting this loco to struggle to haul these at all. I measured a tractive effort of 0.31 newtons, which seems quite crazy for a small loco like this. That's actually a lot more than the old J70 that I've got, which is only a couple of grams lighter. So I don't know whether this has just got a better motor, maybe they've upgraded the motor, maybe it's a more powerful, more torque-filled motor, I don't know. But yeah, there is some great torque here. Let me demonstrate that again, up to 50% speed. Hopefully you can see there that the wheels are turning. I can feel that they are, and this loco's really pushing as well. There's a lot of energy there. So it's a lively runner as well. Anyway, let's go and see if the couplings are at the right height. Let's back it up and let's attempt a coupling. Alright, let's see if I can do this steadily. Let's slow it right down. There we go. Not as steadily as I should have done it, but okay. Did it couple? Yes, it did. And so did the coaches, by the way. When I put those down onto the track, yeah, perfect coupling immediately. Wow. Alright, there we go, and doesn't it just all look excellent when you put it together? I think for me it's just this Great Eastern livery. It's fantastic. And I've gone from having nothing in my collection in this livery to having a complete train just through buying one train pack. So happy with this. It really does look great, and it seems to run beautifully as well. So I'm going to get it going at about 30 speed, and we'll see if it slows down at all at that lower power level. I've also got, almost went to move on there without showing you what else I'm running, the other J70 in my collection. This is the LNER one, which looks totally different. I mean, the decoration's completely different. Yeah, it's a different colour, but the lining's totally different as well. It looks like almost an entirely different model, but it is more or less the same thing, and that's hauling some Genesis coaches. See which other pre-grouping locos you can spot in the sidings. There is an odd one out, and I'll pin the first comment to identify it. I'll give you this one though, because it's another Great Eastern loco, and this is the N7, a much larger loco obviously, and also in a very unique livery in the collection. So here it goes, accurate Wisbech and Upwell tramway train, as seen from 1919 onwards, and bear in mind I'm only running this at 30% power on the controller, so the losses in the track are going to be quite significant at that level. And yet, because this loco is so efficient, it didn't slow down on the curves, it's not struggling, and you know what, even if I put a load more coaches behind it, I'm 99% sure it wouldn't struggle there either, because of the masses of torque in the mechanism. So I think you can safely call me very happy indeed with this train pack. I love everything about it. I love that it's pre-grouping, and this has to be the best quality pre-grouping train pack I've ever had. Everything about it just works brilliantly, particularly the loco. It's one of the most detailed models you can get at a very reasonable price, even when it's on its own, and even more so in this train pack. It's massively detailed, so many great features, and I think while the loco is quite a bit better than the coaches themselves are still incredible for what they are. Masses of detail packed into them, really impressive interiors. I do wish they had maybe one or two more features than they do for what they cost. I guess the main one would be lighting, because it's a shame not to be able to see the extent of the interior detail that well due to the lack of lighting, but really that's not much of a complaint. That's more, I've got to try and find the positives and negatives in this set to make a fair and balanced review. It's not really a meaningful detraction given how detailed the rest of it is. So I'm very happy indeed. As you can see, it's working perfectly. From a mechanical point of view, there is absolutely nothing to fault. It's just a fantastic train pack. Really happy with it. And now then, some ratings for the new Rapido Wisbech and Upwell GER train pack. And do bear in mind for these ratings that I'm rating both the loco and the two tram cars. So with that in mind, the level of detail for me is a 4.5. It's very near to perfection. In fact, the loco on its own I think would get a 5 from me. Beautifully painted, so many separate details including sprung buffers and real chains, but it's really the interior that is so impressive on this model. The firebox, the smoke box, the boiler inside, all of that detail replicated, just incredible. You've also got a lot of customizability as well. You can open the windows, you can model them in the closed position if you like, just fantastic. The coaches though I would give 4-star. They are similarly impressive in terms of the detail. They are excellently decorated. The interior detail's really good as well. The leather straps for grabbing onto are a fantastic touch as well, but the detail isn't quite at the same level as the loco because there are no sprung buffers and there are also no working lights in these coaches. I think really to pay almost £70 for a coach without lighting is a bit unfortunate, so I've split the difference and given 4.5 on the detail overall. In general, these are fantastically detailed models. In terms of the performance though, there's no real way to mark these down, so I've given them 5-star. The loco is incredible. It's very smooth and quiet, and it's got a great range of speeds to it, including a very controlled crawl. It can go impossibly slow, and it really doesn't cut out on points or anything like that. The coaches are free rolling, one more so than the other, but still free rolling. Couplings work perfectly, no issues with derailments or wobbling or instability, just no way to fault the performance at all. I've given it 5-star. The pulling power, this is for the J70 only, is really impressive. 0.31 newtons or about 20 coaches on straight and level track. That is more than Hornby's new 2MT, which has a die-cast body. Very, very powerful little loco, more than enough to haul these two little tram cars. The mechanism I've given 4.5 star. Generally, the quality of the mechanism is great. It's pretty easy to access, although I did have a bit of trouble getting the body off. That was harder than it should have been. But other than that, it has the proper bearings on the axles, nice simple mechanism, not over-engineered, quality motor with a flywheel, nice modern DCC socket as well, the Next 18 one, pre-fitted speaker as well, which is a great touch. I'm not a big fan of the split chassis design. It does cause a bit of a headache in terms of serviceability, but it has no negative effects in terms of performance. So 4.5 star, a really, really decent mechanism. The quality I've given 4 star. Again, I'm splitting between the loco and the coaches here because the loco was perfect. Loads of metal on board, fantastically heavy, really nicely put together, no issues or blips in the separate details or the decoration, absolutely great. The coaches, not quite so much. They are quite light and plasticky feeling. Some of the details didn't quite sit right on them, particularly the wiring up on the roofs, and they are quite fragile as a result of some of these details. So I've knocked the coaches down a little bit to 3 star, but between the two, it's a solid 4 star. Value for money then, so the RRP is £269.95 for this, although I bought this pack from the retailers for £229.46. Now, obviously that is a lot of money. Yes, it's a lot to spend in one go, but when you consider that some locomotives can cost this much, in fact, some of them cost a lot more than that, and here for that money, you're getting a locomotive, and a great one at that, plus an entire train. The two coaches do make an entire train here. So from that point of view, the value for money is great. I think the loco on its own for about £127.50 is a steal. The coaches though for £67.95 could have been a bit better, I think. They're quite lightweight, they don't have all the features they could have like sprung buffers or lighting. Sprung buffers perhaps a little bit unnecessary, but at almost £70 I find myself asking why not. Now you can understand why these would have to be a bit pricey because they're very unique items of rolling stock. There's not going to be tons of different variations Rapido can produce in the future, so I do understand why these should be a little bit pricey, but looking at purely what you get for your money and comparing it to what else is available in the industry, yes, you are paying quite a lot for the privilege of having a model of these two coaches produced accurately. Having said that though, considering the whole pack, I'm still going to give it a 4 on value because you really do get what you pay for. Overall then, that is 8.89 out of 10, or a grade of A. Very, very well deserved. When people ask me what does a model need to do to get an A, well, look at this train pack. It's a very, very strong example. So into the logbook for 24, and it knocks the socks off the other two items that I reviewed already this year by quite a long way. So can I recommend this thing? Yes, absolutely. So folks, there you go, that will just about do it for this review, and please do let me know down in the comments what you think about this. I'm super impressed with Rapido here, not only for producing a fantastic train pack, which this is, but also for producing genuinely top quality stuff here. I think they had a few of us quite worried with their last release, the 15XX, because the quality of those models in many cases was not great, and the one I received was absolutely terrible. Lots and lots of unconnected issues with it. This though is very close to perfect. We've got the slight issue with the wiring on the roof of the coaches, but apart from that, the quality is absolutely top notch. So to my mind at least, Rapido have completely redeemed themselves, and they've showed that they are truly capable of producing top quality models at a reasonable price as well. I think while the coaches may be a little bit pricey, in this pack with it all together, the value's really not bad for what you get. So one of the best products I've seen for a while, really impressed with it. It's bad news because now I want the other Wisbech and Upwell train pack, which I can't afford, but I find myself tempted. So I'm going to go away now and try and resist temptation to order the other set. If you've got any words of encouragement to help me in that mission, please do leave them in the comments. But for now, I'll leave you with that. Thank you so much for watching, and I really hope you enjoyed this train pack as much as I did. Alright, well done Rapido. Thanks for watching. Catch you on the next one.